Okay, so we're going to look at this quote, and this is done by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think I'll read a short excerpt of him versus one of his books in English. It says, the progress of invention is really a threat to a monarchy. So does a king like to see progress? Science? No. But he says, whenever I see a railroad track, I look for a republic. So America at this time will be the #1 producer of railroads. All right? And this is really galvanizing our economy because we are moving. We're trying to catch up because who has been the superior industrial power? England. All right? So one of the things that we're going to look at is why do we need railroads? And here's our first image. Sorry, I'll just pull it like this. Do y'all see these little triangles? It says the center of the population. Our center of the population in 1790 was over here. And then it starts to move which way? West. And so, remember those roads and canals? Which area did they connect? The north to the west, because this is where we had the highest concentration. So why did the south get left out? Look at this. Are they along this channel of where our population movement's going? And they get upset with those roads and canals because are they having to pay for them? Yes. But the government and the states will put them right here because this is where our growth is. Okay, we're going to look at this image once it clears up. If it clears up. Did that clear up for y'all? No? Okay. So, this is out west, right? Do you think it looked like this when the settlers came there? No. Okay, so how do you think it looked before it looked like this? There was way more trees. And so they're going to come out in a wagon, right? So when it's a family, right? So when the dad gets out here, is he going to just let his wife sit in the wagon? He's like, just look at me take down all these trees and bask in my glory as I take them down. What is he going to probably tell his wife?
Ask for help.
Ask for help, right? You need it because he can't take down all these trees without her assistance, right? And the kids will probably be there moving away debris and stuff, right? And so the building of these log cabins is going to be a lot of assistance from women, right? And so out west, will women have a new elevated role? And that's one of the things that you have to understand, that because women will help with westward expansion, women will have a new elevated role. And when they make the demands for equality in voting, will it be granted to them at the state and local level? Yes. So out west, women, do they help? And will they gain suffrage out west? At the lower levels, but at the national level, will they? No. And the first state to actually do this statewide is Wyoming. And men are like, why Wyoming? Why did you give women the right to vote? But again, it's because women, do they take a greater role as we move out in the development of society? Okay, so I want us to look at our population. If people are having to press west, do we have a growing population? Okay? And let's look at these numbers. If you look from 1790 to 1810, did that number almost double? And then we go from 1810 to 1830, did that number almost double? Okay, so every 20 years, our population is doubling, our white population. So white population is anything that is non-African American, okay? And then I even want to look at our non-white, which I said is African American. Look from 1790 to 1810. Did it nearly double? Yes. And then we go from 1810 to 1830. Did it almost double? Almost. How are they doing this? Because they ended slave importation. How have they done this? Repopulating through natural production, right? So are women very important in slave society? So I'm going to look at this white population. We know that our fertility rates are going up in America. But there's two specific groups of people who are coming over. Does anybody know what two specific European groups would be coming over that are adding to our population? Irish, yes. Irish are one of them. So let's look at this little thing right here. So I want you to look at what is the year that there is a mass amount of Irish coming to America?
1851 to
1860,
1860.
right? Yeah, do y'all see it slowly rising, 1840 to 1850, 1850 to 1860? So what do y'all think is going on back in Ireland? Okay, and so most of our Irish who will come to America, will they come with wealth? No. When we look at the Germans, our next population, do y'all see by 1881 to 1890 right here? And then over here, that's a high number, right? There is wars going on and turmoil. So if you're leaving because of a war, a lot of them are leaving because they don't want their sons to be conscripted. So do they have money or not have money?
No.
They do have money. So which group has money?
The Germans.
The Germans. Which one doesn't have money?
The Irish.
So I want us to look at a document. And this is really going to play into what will happen with both of these groups. So this is a document. It is a German immigrant living in Cincinnati. Sorry, I just need a... She says, a lot of people come over here who were well off in Germany. Why were they well off? They had money, but why are they leaving?
Because they don't want their sons.
War, they don't want their sons conscripted. But they were enticed to leave their fatherland because of boastful and imprudent letters by their friends and their children. And they thought they could become rich in America. This deceives a lot of people, since what can they do here? If they stay in a city, they can only earn their bread at hard and unaccustomed labor. What is this hard and unaccustomed labor they're referring to? Machining, working in the factories. If they want to live in a country and don't have enough money to buy a piece of land that is already cleared and has a house, they have to settle in the wild brush and have to work very hard to clear those trees out of the way so they can sow and plant. So this lady's saying, if you move west, do you have work in front of you? Didn't we see that on one of the images? So she's saying, but people who are healthy, strong, hardworking do pretty well. So is she giving both sides to immigration? She says it's negative because what do these people have to do? If you come here and you don't have money, you have to stay where? Where do you have to stay? In the cities, because you're going to have to work where? In the factories. If you have a little bit of money, you can move which way? West. But what is the negative with that? You have to clear your own land. So she talks about the positives, right? And the negatives. So looking back about the two groups I talked to you about, the Irish and the Germans, tell me which group is going to stay in the city. The Irish, because they come with no what? Money, because they're experiencing what back at home? Famine. And so will there be some resentment against the Irish? Because they're willing to work for lower wages, right? And so there is going to be some xenophobia, some hatred towards the Irish immigrants because they do what with wages? They lower it. However, our German immigrants, they have what? Money, and they're going to move which way? West. And they're going to become what? Farmers. They're going to start adding to the wheat production. They will eventually go into Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, become our meat packers and cheese packers. They're going to add to the brewery system, and hence this will eventually lead to a team that y'all all hate, apparently, except one person who loves. But this will eventually lead to the German overtones with the Green Bay Packers, which we'll get to when I get to the Gilded Age again. Okay? Sorry to bring up y'all's feud back here. Okay? So, in that letter, she talked about the imprudent letters. But these are images, I don't know who has Thomas Cole in our class, in the Hudson River School of Art, but this is a new art movement that occurs. This is not Thomas Cole, but this is one of his students. And I want us just to look at the Hudson River School of Art. What is it focused on? Nature. And how does it look? Okay, so first off, it's very green, right? It's showing us a river. It shows us landscapes. But what does it show us about these landscapes? Huh? Oh, there's Indians here, right? So has anybody come out and taken this land? No, there's potential to come take the land. It's fertile. And these images are being sent across the world about how much potential America has. If you were an immigrant seeing this, what would this encourage? Potential land that you possibly want to do what? Farm. Come here. River valleys are so important. Y'all talked about this in world history, right? The best way to get very well off is living by that river. And has anybody captured this land? And so is this going to encourage people to move west? Right? So remember those imprudent letters she was talking about? Well, these images, isn't this image verifying that imprudent fact? So I'm going to look at another immigrant's letter. Okay, so this is Margaret McCarthy, just by her name. What does that tell us she is? Irish. She says, she's writing a letter to an immigrant family back in Ireland. She says, this is a good place and a good country, but there's one thing that is ruining this place. The immigrants. Wait, isn't that an irony? She's an immigrant, and now who's she saying who's ruining this place? The immigrants. She says the immigrants have not money enough to take them to the interior of the country. So what is she saying about these immigrants? They're what? They're poor. She says they're ruining our country because they don't move where? Out. She says, which obliges them to remain in New York and the like places. So where is New York and the like places? What is she referring to? In the cities. They have to remain in the cities, which causes the less demand for labor and a great reduction of wage. So why is this immigrant hating on other immigrants? They lower wages. They take jobs. And eventually there is going to be an acronym that a lot of businesses will have on it. It will be NINA. Okay? No Irish need apply. That's really mean, right? Because they don't want them to apply for jobs. They're not going to take any Irish people because are people hating against the Irish? Because they lower wages. And we're going to see for this reason, I would advise no one to come to America that would not have some money after landing here that will enable them to go west in case they would get no work to do here. So her advice, she's like, look, immigrants are ruining this place because what are they doing with wages? They're lowering it. If you're going to come to America, what must you have? Money so you could do what? Move west. Because is there some xenophobia against the immigrant? So, economically, we know why immigrants are not being liked. I'm going to get to you to, here's just more advertisements in Dublin to an immigrant to come over. Okay, we're going to look at this next one. And I know you probably saw this on your last test. There was a political party called the Know Nothing Party. You're like, is that a real thing? It is. Okay, so let me explain about the Know Nothing Party. It's also called America's Party. But they're known formally as the Know Nothings. So this is their strong anti-foreignism is reflected in their platform. It says, America must be ruled by America. And to this end, native-born citizens should be selected for all state, federal, or municipal offices of government employment in the preference of naturalized citizens. So who is he saying? What is this party saying of who should only be able to obtain government elected positions? Americans, right? That were born here. Okay? Is this a hatred towards immigrants? And there's a reason. We already know economically what is their issue. What do they do with wages? They drop it, but there's something else politically why the Know Nothings are going to dislike it. And we're going to look at this image right here. All right. No, they're not going to a costume party. All right. I want you to tell me who you see in this image. Who is this guy? Says lager, beer. Who is that? This is the German. Who is this one? The Irish. And they're frolicking off, right? Carrying what? The ballot box. One of the things that many Americans are concerned is that the Irish and the Germans, the immigrants, will be armed with the right to vote. But oftentimes there is corruption that is going on in this era, and it deals with the political machines. When these Irish and Germans come to America, do they have a job? Do they have a place to stay? And so what will happen is the political machines would come to the immigrant saying, look, I know your husband's struggling, but we'll get him a job and a place for you to stay and food for him. But the day the polls happen, you need to make sure your husband goes to the polls and votes the way I want. Goes to the next woman. He goes to the man saying, look, You need stuff, I'll help you. Is this corruption? We have 95% of attendance going on at election time, but is it true democracy? No, because whose votes are being bought? The immigrants, the Irish, the Germans. And so this is why, do you understand why the Know Nothing Party dislikes with the immigrant voting? Because are they voting for their real vote, or are they being swayed a certain way? And here they're saying that oftentimes many Germans and Irish were swayed by free drinks that they would give. Okay? And so I don't know if you see back here at the polls, people are arguing about what's going on. But we're going to talk about corruption in politics. And this will go on all the way through the Gilded Age, through January, that I'm going to talk about. But do y'all get it now, what's going on? Is this true democracy? And so many people said the only way to combat this is to teach democracy. Could you teach it to them? No, but teach it to their kids. And so many of you have educators as your reformers, right? William McGuffey will create those little McGuffey readers that are patriotic about doing your civic duties. Doing your civic duty, what is it trying to combat? Bad voting, right? Okay. So do y'all get why they're like disliked economically? Because what do they do with wages? They lower them. Do y'all know why they're disliked politically? Because they what? Corrupt voting. I clicked this thinking it was a PowerPoint. Okay, so this is just our Amish people. We're going to talk about the steel plow later, but do y'all see the steel plow right here? They have it at the bottom. It's breaking up the land. That will be one of our new inventions. I've talked about our Germans moving west, and we're going to have little Germanys. Have you ever heard of like Little Italy, Little Ireland? Yeah. Those are things that are going to be created because the immigrants will stay in little enclaves close to each other. Okay, Little China, which we'll eventually get to, and when we get to the Gilded Age. Okay, we already talked about the invention of the cotton gin, right? And this is what's going to revitalize slavery. Slavery was going to be a dying institution, but now we don't need them for tobacco, we don't need them for sugar, but we're going to see their dependency to pick that cotton because this will take the seed and the fiber away faster. So now America, they want to form their own textile mills. And we know after the War of 1812, many Americans start to look into manufacturing. But again, who is the #1 manufacturer in the world? England. And it's because they kept their engineers on lock and key. And one of the engineers, they didn't let them vacation. They didn't let them go overseas. One of the engineers will come to America, Samuel Slater, like he cross-dressed across the Atlantic to get here, and he will come and create the factory system. And so if y'all see that this is water power, and y'all see that's a huge factory, right? But often the top part of this factory is dormitories. They're going to be in the New England area, but is there a lot of people here before immigration? And so what will happen is the New England farmer could not compete with the Western farmer. So they could not afford, if you look at this picture, who is in this textile mill? Women. They could not afford a dowry for their daughter. So a lot of women went into the factory system to make money for their dowry. So in this factory system, they would have churches, they would have educational lectural halls for these people, and eventually this woman, would she stay in this factory system long? No. Okay, and I'm going to show you another image of women in the factory system. Look at this image. Do these look like our typical workers? No, these are middle-class girls who are in the textile mills because they are working for a what? Dowry. And this is something I'm going to explain as a Lowell, Massachusetts thing. Can y'all see any men here? One of the typical things that is going to happen with our economic system all the way up until the 1960s is that we're going to have gender-specific jobs. Females will only work in certain jobs. Males will only work in certain jobs all the way up into the 1960s. You could look at the newspaper and there was a women's section for jobs and a men's section for jobs. I'm going to show you an image where it's just the men. I think it's on the next side of this. Do y'all see the men working in the factory? Okay. The other thing I have to talk about is where do we move from? How do we get to this factory system? There's these two images here. Which one is the skilled craftsman? The guy on the left or the guy on the right? The right. He's making a wheel. So is the guy on the left. Which one is going to be the more expensive one? The one that's made in the factory or the one that's made by the craftsman? Which one can produce more wheels? The factory. Because of the factory, we're going to take now unskilled labor to be able to do something that a skilled craftsman will do. What is going to happen to the cottage industry and the skilled artisan? They're going to die out and the factory system will replace. But it's good for consumers because prices go down, right? Production goes up. So I'm going to look at this wheel, and a lot of this wheel comes to play in this way. This is McCormick's Reaper, and we were looking at the wheels being made, and there was another portion within the book where we saw all the men together. They were working at a McCormick factory. And so, bless you, they're in the West because they're doing wheat here. Do y'all see the way that people used to take down wheat in this image? Do y'all see the person who's taking it down? Do y'all see the guy with the sickle right here? Would this take a long time? Yes. All right, y'all know the sickle is the one that is like a blade that looks like a question mark. The Grim Reaper holds it. Okay. Over here, this is the McCormick Reaper. This Reaper is pulled by a horse, and it has the blades. What's going to happen to the production of that one? Okay, so because of this Reaper, can y'all tell me what the workers are doing now? Do y'all see the workers? They're not working. Where are they? And the tree, this one's like, why are you on the tree? This one's holding the horse. There's some other workers over here, right? There's some workers over there, right? Workers over there. Did y'all see all the people in the top hats now? Why are the people in the top hats there? They're buying what? Because the McCormick Reaper is going to lead to what not existing in the West anymore? Slavery, because now they just need one person, right? Even the farmer could do this, right? So where are all these slaves going to be sold? Down south. And how do you think all these people got, the top hats got to this area? What do you think this guy in the West took out? An ad, right? Is he going to use the shippers? Do those guys in the top hat need to finance the sale? Okay, so do y'all see how the McCormick Reaper is going to lead to what to die in the West? Slavery. And then these slaves will be sold further down south. I had talked about those women in the factory. Were they going to stay there? No, eventually they would make their dowry and then they could be married off. So this is where the typical woman would be in the cult of domesticity at the home, educating. Eventually, women will no longer find a place in the factory system because who's going to come into America to take those low-wage jobs? Immigrants. Which immigrant group? Irish. And the Germans will move which way? West. Okay, some other inventions that's going to help with trade is we get the steamboat. The steamboat will be able to go against the current that's created by Robert Fulton, so that's going to increase trade and cause for prices to go down. We talked about railroads. Where do we see the preponderance of railroads? In the north, right? Do we see some in the south? But is it as much as the north? But do you now see why there's jealousy between the sections? Okay, I want us to look at major roads, canals, and rivers. Where are our major roads and canals? Where is there more roads and canals? Hey, remember when I showed you those arrows that they were going west? Do y'all see that road that is being created now? To go that area, that the way the population is moving. And now, do y'all see why the South is getting upset? Because roads and canals are being built in the North and West, and they're being left out. This is basically drawing our lines for the Civil War. We also get railroads, but we already seen the image. We get new ships that are called clipper ships that move faster. Y'all saw in chapter 18 study guide that people are moving to California, right? Because the promise of gold. And this is what's going to lead to the trails coming out, but then the need for a railroad, which I'll get to in chapter 19. Okay? I'm going to dissect this one with y'all later, but just looking at the resources, which one has greater resources, the North or the South? The North. They have way more resources. They have food, they have mining, they have industry, they have agriculture. In the South, do y'all see this yellow? That only represents cotton. Do they have food in this area? remember what I called this area in yellow? It's not called an area in yellow. It's called the Black Belt. Remember I said it came into eastern Texas? Hey, in this area, cotton is king. So, we're going to look at a couple of notes. Did I go over toll roads with y'all? Turnpikes, the roads. Y'all know what a toll road is? 360. They created it at this time because the government could not fund it. I looked at steamboats, right? We saw canals. The railroad we saw. Telegraph, there was no image in the book, but Morris will come up with the telegraph. Did we see the cotton kingdom? The South depended on cotton, which we saw in chapter 16. We saw the steel plow that was breaking up the land. We saw the McCormick Reaper, right? That increased production, and no longer do we need what in the West. I also talked about the factory revolution. That pre-market, it was done by an artisan. It took a longer time, so the price was high. And now with the factory system, the clock will drive it. There's increased production. There's more workers there. Okay. The next thing on the factory improvements, I talked about Samuel Slater coming into America. He came to America with the engineering plans from England. I talked about the Lowell Mill. Who was working in this mill? Women, because what were they trying to make? Their dowry. And when they made their dowry, what did they go and do after that? They got married, right? So who replaced women in the Lowell system? Immigrants. For them. Okay. So the next thing, interchangeable parts. I already talked about this with Eli Whitney. We know he created the cotton gin, but we also know that he did other things with guns. The sewing machine, I didn't get to show you the sewing machine. I did. That was a lot of S's all at once. And my second language acquisition was coming in, issues. Okay, so we're going to see that y'all saw the women at the textile mills. Last thing, immigrants. What were our two main groups fleeing? Irish and Germans. I did not get to go over patent laws with y'all. I'm going to look at that later. The last thing is we kind of saw this stuff going on. We saw each area have a specific thing of the market revolution. The eastern city. This is where immigrants are. This is where our manufacturing is, right? We talked about the west. This is where, what immigrant can move out here? Germans. This is where our farmers, what are they producing? Wheat, right? And then our south, what are they producing? Do I see different regional differences? Looking at this, which region is going to like the roads and canals? The eastern, sorry, I don't care, Siri. Eastern and western, right? Who's not going to like the roads? The south. Who's going to like the protective tariffs? The eastern, right? Are the west and the south going to like it? Okay, who's going to like the bank? The eastern, who's not going to like it? So do I have regional differences that will eventually, once I get political parties, set the foundation? So the market revolution is really going to set the foundation for the Civil War because it solidifies our economies being different.